also like to say aloha mai, aloha pumehana. It's so wonderful to be able to be here in Seattle and to be here with Town Hall and especially with the Wing Luke Museum. I was invited about 10 years ago to come to the first exhibition that they had opened on Bruce Lee, and just sort of, that just really made the book become real for me, because for many years it was an idea, hadn't really started writing, been doing a lot of researching, but then to kind of be plunged into the real world of Bruce Lee, which has continued here in Seattle over 50 years after his passing, was everything. It was everything. And so I made frequent trips back to the museum over the years. You know, Vivian Chan was always happy to introduce me to everybody, to invite me in, got to meet the staff, and I eventually spent hours upon hours at the Wing Luke going through a lot of the books that Shannon had donated to the Wing Luke. And so now you can actually go up to the research library, and they today have a little bit of an exhibit there, a small little thing, where you'll see some of the books that I actually got to touch and open and read and take notes from as part of this process for Watermere Echo. So it feels like a real full circle moment, and I'm very thankful to the Wing Luke Museum and to the entire staff there for all of the support that they've given me and they've given so many of us over the years. Seattle is a place where Bruce Lee first became the Bruce Lee that we know. The teacher, the philosopher, the fighter for everyone who's ever felt stepped on, the fighter for justice. It was here that he worked as a busboy. It was here that he barely escaped being drafted into fighting the wars in Asia. It was here that both as a citizen and as an immigrant, he made close friends with people who taught him what it meant to struggle, to be poor and a minority, to live in segregated neighborhoods, to live with people of such a breadth of cultural diversity in the Central District. It's here that he dove into the study of Asian philosophy, here that he formed his first school as a 19, 20-year-old. It was here that he began developing the ideas that would make him famous as a martial arts renegade. It was here that he learned how to be an American, how to be an Asian American. It was also here that he tried to meet as many girls as he could. We'll hear about that today. Trying to impress them with his muscles, with his coin tricks, with his cha-cha. And it was here that he met the woman who would become his wife, Linda. Bruce Lee arrived in Seattle unformed, and 5 years later, he left to become the hero that we all know today. So it's amazing, and it's powerful, and it just means a lot to be able to be here in Seattle with you all to talk about Bruce Lee's life. So what I'm going to do is actually read a little bit of an excerpt here from the book, if that's okay, and then to introduce some amazing people in Bruce Lee's life, and we're going to talk about Bruce Lee's time here in Seattle. Sound good? Yeah? All right, we'll do that then. Okay, so actually, I'd say maybe, I don't know, a quarter to a third of the book, it feels like maybe more, is set in Seattle, because it's so important to understanding who Bruce is and who he becomes. And so this part is really kind of a stage setter, and then you'll get to read the multiple chapters that there are on Seattle afterwards with the book that you purchased tonight. Thank you so much. We can eat another week. Okay, so this is a chapter. It's called The Power Broker, and it focuses actually a lot on Ruby Chow. I know Judge Chow is in the audience. Thank you, Mark, for all of your support. And we're not going to read that portion tonight, although, again, that section meant a lot to me. But I wanted to do this part as sort of a scene setter. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 9, The Power Broker. When Bruce arrived in Seattle on September 3rd, 1959, he found the city even more beautiful than San Francisco. Bays and lakes of sparkling indigo that met a palette knife stroke of verdant greens and hemlock, fir, and cedar. But he would learn that crystal days like this were fleeting. Most of the time, you guys are laughing. Most of the time, Seattle, I thought you would be insulted. Most of the time, Seattle would be shrouded in a gray mist pelted by cold, steady rain, a place of intimate distances. Seattle was the kind of town where, as a community activist Wing Luke once put it, the first English words every Chinese learned were yes, no, and he hit me first. In 1962, Luke became the first person of color ever elected to the Seattle City Council. Many credited his victory to an unusual get-out-the-vote campaign led by Bruce's new boss and landlord, Ruby Chow. She had organized all the Chinese restaurateurs to fill their fortune cookies with messages that stated, Charlie Chan style, the phrase, Wing Luke says, and concluded with a little bit of humor and a little bit of threat. It's wise to vote for Wing Luke. That was badass. His electoral breakthrough only highlighted how racially segregated the city remained. A century after the first Chinese had arrived, Seattle was still 95% white. Seattle was the kind of town where a young Chinese-American girl named Sue Ann Kay, a student at Garfield High School in central Seattle, could win an essay contest that offered the opportunity to attend Ballard High School in North Seattle for a short time. For 6 weeks, she and the other prize winners, a Japanese-American girl, a Jewish-American boy, a black boy, and a Caucasian girl, could enjoy Ballard's new science classrooms, their new gym for the boys, a remodeled gym for the girls, and a state-of-the-art auditorium. Ballard was the kind of school that boasted all the prerequisites of one that merited a, quote, all-American rating from educational experts at the University of Minnesota. At the time, only 3 black students and 1 Japanese American were enrolled there as full-time students. Seattle school administrators sent 5 white students from Ballard to Garfield High and called it an exchange program. Garfield was the kind of school where thousands of community members crowded into student assemblies to hear Martin Luther King test lines for what would become his I Have a Dream speech. And later in 1967, C. Stokely Carmichael, pre-Kwame Ture, after winning a free speech battle against the school board, heralded a new era of black power consciousness. The school was roughly equal parts white, black, Asian, and other. Sometimes Garfield students marked the boundaries between each other with racial epithets. Sometimes they mixed in ways that pointed to the future. During the 1950s and the 1960s, Garfield produced cultural visionaries like Quincy Jones, Ernestine Anderson, Minoru Yamasaki, Robert Bumps Blackwell, and Jimi Hendrix. You guys all know this, right? By the 70s, black and Asian children would no longer need to compose exceptional essays to be bused across town to a wealthy all-white public school. Seattle was the kind of town where 4 months before Congress had passed the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964, voters defeated by a 2-to-1 margin a referendum that would have outlawed housing discrimination. Nearly all the people of color in Seattle were confined to the inner city, an area called the Central District, from Chinatown in the west to Lake Washington in the east, and Madison Valley in the north to Rainier Valley at the southern edge of the city. Cross-shaped strokes of color in the middle of a milk-white map. Madison Street marked the northern border between whites and non-whites, Broadway a western one. Edison Tech, like Ruby Chow's, was just on the low-fawn side of Broadway. I actually liked writing that when I was writing that, like the low-fawn side of Broadway. But it's, I know there's gonna be a right-winger in here who's gonna tape that and like put it on the net and just be like, see, you see? You see what they say? But its halls teemed with the Central District's multiracial working class. Nurses, mechanics, veterans, those labeled non-traditional students. Leroy Garcia, whose wife Sherry was attending Edison Tech, said there were folks who got kicked out of other schools or got pregnant or this or that. It was a delinquent high school sort of deal. In the segregated city, Garfield and Edison were cauldrons of amalgamation in the borderland between the white and the non-white, and the wealthy and working class neighborhoods. So that's just to set the stage. And now it's my incredible pleasure to introduce you to the folks who will be sitting on stage here tonight. So I want to bring them up one by one. And first introduce you to Sue Ann Kay. Anywhere maybe the front? Do you want to sit in the, oh, sit in the middle. Sit in the middle. Yeah, one of the middle seats. Yeah. Sue Ann Kay is a legendary organizer from Capitol Hill, a longtime advocate for the Chinatown International District, and a member of the CID Coalition, aka Humbaos Not Hotels, who have a table here in the house tonight. Go and visit them. And egg rolls. She is also a singer with the Seattle Raging Grannies, Sue Ann Kay. Doug Palmer. We get to introduce Doug Palmer. Doug Palmer is a fellow graduate of Garfield High School, a retired lawyer who has spent most of his life working across Asia and the Pacific, and he's the author of Bruce Lee, Sifu, Friend, and Big Brother, which is going to be on sale over here by the Wing Luke after the show. Doug Palmer. And last but certainly not least in our hearts, Shannon Lee, the daughter of Bruce Lee. Shannon's the author of Be Water, My Friend, The Teachings of Bruce Lee, and the co-author of the best-selling YA novel, Breath of the Dragon, which is also here on sale. She's the founder and president of the Bruce Lee Foundation and the host of the Bruce Lee podcast, as well as the short-form podcast, A Little Leeway. Shannon Lee. How y'all doing tonight?
Fine, thanks.
All right.
You got your
Happy
mic
to be
too,
here.
Sue Ann?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. How you doing?
Fine. How are you doing?
Doing great. Super happy to be here on this panel with you all. Let's start with you, Sue Ann.
Okay.
I think you met Shannon's father first of everybody here on the panel.
Yes, I was 16 years old. Now I'm 80.
Wow.
And so it's dipping back into the memory bank here, but it's all there. Yeah.
Let's pull it all out. How did you meet him?
It's kind of a long, drawn-out story. My father was the first one who saw Bruce perform and wanted him to teach my brother. So he would drive across the lake to where they were practicing. And Doug will talk about that because he was also part of that ride early on. Mm. But then he befriended Bruce and invited him into the home, and they were sparring in the backyard, my brother and Bruce, and I was watching, and Bruce showed me some tricks. I was really impressed. And he said, well, you should come to my class. And I said, okay. And he said, just come. That's the way, yeah, very enthusiastic. And my father took me to the Saturday classes until later on, Linda, who was the first one to drive a car in our group, also joined and took me to class. So, yeah, that was the beginning, and I was hooked.
Let's back. There was so much in there. There's so much. There's yes. Shanna's mom, like, driving you guys around town. Like, you guys joyriding and stuff and doing all kinds of carousing in the car. The AM radio cranked up, I'm sure. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And you were so poetic about describing Seattle. But, yeah, I've started out at Beacon Hill and moved to Capitol Hill, where Volunteer Park is, the Arboretum. Beautiful places. I'm sure everyone here is aware. And yeah, so this is where Bruce hung out and took advantage of all those places too. But yeah, Chinatown was our place of refuge, where we ate and played.
You were, so you were Bruce Lee's first female student. What was that like?
Yeah, people often ask, what was that like? And my reaction is, oh, I was the first female student. I didn't feel like I was any different from the rest of the class. There was something about Bruce that just, you know, we were there to learn from him, and he had such a presence that everyone was focused on Bruce. And he made it a point to go around the class and show the technique to everyone. So I never, you know, I just waited my turn, and he treated me like the rest of the class. But I really appreciate, there was one class where he gave me an umbrella, and he showed me how I could use it as an extension of my arms. And that has always stayed with me, because we did the whole routine. And once the person was on the ground, they added punches. But not that I ever had to use that umbrella, but once you're exposed to it, it's still there with you.
Yeah.
Well, and everyone's got an umbrella in Seattle, right?
However, in Seattle, we pride ourselves on not using umbrellas.
It's true. It's true. It's true. I saw it today.
I'm learning so much tonight. This is awesome. We pulled some pictures. I don't know if you've seen, I don't know, I just wanted to surprise you, actually. These are great photos of you at I think this is the University District room, right? Where you guys are practicing. And that's you on the left over there, the circle.
Yeah.
I think we might have pulled that from the Northwest Asian Weekly. Shout out to the Northwest Asian Weekly in the house. And that's Taki, of course, Taki Kimura, Bruce is sparring with. You're looking on, getting ready to do your thing. And of course, the middle picture with you and Taki. And the last photo, what's going on with that? Doug's turning a little red.
You should take this one.
Suhan was showing how to kick the hell out of somebody that was trying to punch her.
And I'm not sure if in that photo, Bruce used to make little dotted lines so that we would remember, you know, how we were supposed to block and then kick right after or at the same time. But that studio, too, was so special. It was his first formal studio, is what you wrote. And yeah, and a shout out to the Seattle Bruce Lee fan club that tried to make it a historically preserved, but wasn't successful. Charlotte's here somewhere, and Philip.
Now, there's one other, well, there's a lot of details in these photos, but I'm wondering if the two of you could describe what it is that you're wearing, because you all have uniforms that you all have for the school. And yeah, tell us a little bit about what the uniforms look like, how they came about, and yeah. Did you wear them around town challenging people to fight?
No, we just wore them for class. And this might have been the first time that we actually wore some kind of uniform, because the first couple of years when I was taking it, we just used street clothes and nothing formal. In fact, this might have been the first time Bruce really paid rent for a space, because we practiced in Leroy Garcia's yard and parks, in parking lots, open parking lots, et cetera, et cetera.
Doug, let's kind of ask you the question of how you met Bruce Lee.
I was 16 too, actually. It was right after my junior year at Garfield. And I had boxed since 5th grade or so. And I was in Chinatown for a street fair that they have every year leading up to Seafair. And I saw this demonstration by a Chinese guy and several of his students, and I was just blown away. I mean, as I said, I'd boxed a while, but I'd never seen anything like it, and I was mesmerized. And so he did the chisao, the sticking hand, with his students. He did a praying mantis form, which I'd never seen anything like, executed perfectly and very crisply. And the power that he generated was, I mean, it was awesome. So I decided that's something I wanted to learn. And I let the word out among Chinese friends at Garfield, and nothing came of it. I didn't hear anything for a week or two. And a week later, there was a Japanese community event, same kind of street fair, in front of the Buddhist church called Bonodori, and I was milling in the crowd, felt a tap on my shoulder, and turned around. It was Bruce. Looking at me, he said, "Heard you were looking for me." And I said, "Yeah, I just..." And I quickly let him know I was not challenging him or anything. But I told him I'd seen his demonstration in Chinatown and wanted to learn. He kind of nodded non-committally and said, "Well, we practice on Thursday nights. You know, if you're drop by sometime and we'll see." Well, he didn't tell me where it was, but talking to Sue Ann's sister, who was in my class, I found out that their younger brother was already taking Kung Fu, and so I hopped to ride with them the next week, and that's how I started taking lessons from him.
I wanted to ask you both too, what were the classes like? Like, how did they start? What was he doing in it? What were you? Obviously, you're learning how to kick people in the groin. But what other kinds of things? Like, just describe what a typical class would have been like.
Well, we would start out, at least when I did it in Leroy's backyard, we would start with a salutation, the formal to Bruce, and he would reciprocate. And then we would do a lot of exercises that were mostly for limbering up, stretching exercises. And we'd practice certain techniques. And he would then usually give a short lecture might be about a different Kung Fu school we might run across. It might have been Taoist philosophy. He was big on peppering, like be water, et cetera. It was one of his favorite phrases.
Yeah, bend like the bamboo,
Right.
like the willow, and spring back stronger than ever.
Then we'd spar for a while.
Yeah,
That was it.
yeah.
What do you remember?
Well, I remember the studio in the basement, and it was like going down. It's where the lobster roll house is. There's some disagreement which door is the entry, but I think we went and we verified that it was at 414. But I think
414.
14 and a half, 8th Avenue.
8th Avenue.
Yeah, except Taki said it was on the corner. And maybe Bruce taught in all those places. But that's the one that felt like.
One we thought was maybe
Yeah.
it.
I mean, they fixed it up. People are living in it now. But then it was a dirt floor with a light bulb. And I took Linda there, and I was a little worried that she was going to get turned off.
Instead,
But she kept coming. And Bruce treated her just like the rest of the students, too. That was very special, yeah.
Okay, so you just dropped that in there. Let's back that up and unpack that a little bit, right? Like, you and Linda, how do you go from joyriding in Linda's car on weekends to actually studying martial arts and he's also very, very young, right? You all were young.
Yeah.
You were 16 when you first started. Doug, you were 16 as well when you first started? And he was just a few years older than you.
He was 4 years older than me.
4 years older. Yeah, so he's 20 years old. And he's also teaching a lot of students who are much, much older than
Yeah.
you.
I think myself and Roger, Sue-Ann's younger brother, were the two youngest students in the class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
okay,
he was
sorry.
like 22, and like the book that he wrote then, I remember when he went to pick up extra copies, and it was all, I'm not sure if it was hand typed, but it looks like it's typed with all his drawings, just ahead of all of us.
What kinds of drawings and things was he writing?
Very
in these?
detailed, everything that, you know, he had learned in Hong Kong possibly, but he was, yeah, a real student of Kung Fu, and that's why we were all mesmerized. I mean, for a 16-year-old, and you go into a class, and he says something as simple as the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And I go, yeah. But then he shows you, okay, so there's the person's face, and there's your fist. The shortest distance is right there. You know, so simple, and so everybody was hooked. And then the Chi Sao, to learn about energy, it was, yeah, just a real aha moment. And through the years, I've taken that interest in energy medicine. Somebody showed me that, you know, if somebody's giving you a bad time, you can just do a figure 8, and that'll break that negative energy. But there's just a lot of things that came out of what I learned from him with yin and yang. And I've told the story about acupuncture. He introduced me to acupuncture, and I checked with physicians at the U of W asking them, did they know about acupuncture? And they responded, oh, voodoo? Yeah, and so now it's very commonplace, and even our insurance covers acupuncture.
We got to come back to the love story in a second. Because that's how we get Shannon, right? So, yeah. So let's come back to that. But I just wanted to ask you, Doug. So you were quite athletic. You were boxing, and your brothers were also athletes as well. Your family, a bunch of athletes in your family. And so I guess 2 questions. One is what was different as you were beginning to learn, you know, the martial arts here? First question. And the second question is, I understand that he decided to announce to Ruby that he was leaving, and suddenly showed up on your doorstep. So I'm wondering if you could tell that story as well. But first, maybe the you know, sort of boxing, American boxing or Western boxing to martial arts thing, and then if you could tell us a story about how he ended up with you all, staying with you all for a while.
Well, yeah, the thing that impressed me about Kung Fu was that it had not only the hands, which boxing had, and boxing had a lot of rules you had to follow if you're actually boxing in the ring, although my boxing coach knew a lot of dirty tricks too that you couldn't use in the ring but were useful in a real fight. But Kung Fu had the feet, the knees, the shoulders, I mean, everything. It seemed like a very full, complete system of martial arts, so that's what really drew me into it. And as far as Bruce showing up on my family's doorstep, he invited me after my freshman year in college to spend the summer in Hong Kong with his family. And I jumped at the chance, and his family welcomed me treated me like one of the family. It was really special. This is after Bruce went back after 4 years in Seattle. First time he went back to see his family. And at the end of the summer, I guess he had decided he did not want to move back in with Ruby Chow. So when we came back, I went back to go, this is at the end of the summer, back to school on the East Coast. And he asked my parents if he could stay with them, and they said, sure. I mean, how could they say no? I just spent 2 months with his family in Hong Kong. So he stayed with my parents for several weeks, I guess, until that, well, different slide now, but the slide where Sue Ann and I were sparring.
This one. Yeah.
The University District, he was just getting that ready. And there was apartment in the back of it that he could sleep in and stuff, so that was what he was moving into.
And these pictures here are actually of that summer that you all were in Hong Kong. Is that right?
Yes, those were all, you can see us sparring on the rooftop, one of the rooftops, which was often used as Hong Kong is very crowded, as many of you probably know, and rooftops were used commonly for all kinds of stuff. And the other one was in a park somewhere. And the one in the middle is in the family apartment.
Okay, so love story. So how did you bring Linda into this?
Well, both of us were at Garfield during a very special time, 60, 61, 62. And like it was mentioned, Bruce came to the philosophy class. I'm not sure if to demonstrate or to talk about philosophy, most likely both. And Linda and I were walking down the hall, and she said, "Who is that guy?" And I said, "Oh, that's Bruce, my Kung Fu teacher." And I said, "You should come and see the class," and she did. Yeah,
Okay.
And, and here we are with Shannon now. But
I think Shannon and I want more. Like, what was going on? Like, were sparks flying from the very beginning?
well,
right?
I have
Like,
one story to tell. You know, I was not where she was. She was leaps and bounds ahead of me. But we were giving a birthday party in this formal studio on University Way. We had a birthday cake, and we had birthday presents. It was Bruce's birthday. And it was after the class. We were surprising him. And I think he didn't like all that attention on him, and he said, "Let's all cha-cha." Yeah. And so he turned the music on, and yeah.
I heard that he taught a lot of people how to cha-cha in Seattle.
Yeah, he taught us all.
Yeah.
Not quite like how he does it, but yeah, we got the basic.
So then we get to Shannon. Shannon, actually, did you have any questions you want to ask of Doug and Sue Ann about these early days?
Oh my
Your parents
gosh.
getting together and you know all the stuff that's jumping off. Your father teaching all of the him learning all of this philosophy as well at the same time and.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard a lot of stories from a lot of his students over the years, about how he taught. And, I trained with Ted Wong for a number of years. And he would say, we would just sort of watch him. Like, he would talk a lot and convey some philosophy and all that sort of stuff. They would do chisal, they would do all that sort of thing. But he said a lot of the time we would just watch him and learn by watching. Is that your experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. But he was very good at explaining also, if you had a question.
Yeah. Okay. So you weren't sort of left to try and mimic what he was doing? No. Yeah. When did you...
Pretty hard to mimic what
I
he was
know,
doing.
well... Well, I remember Ted sort of like saying like, yeah, and we would just watch him and try to figure out what he was doing.
Especially because you could move so fast you couldn't even see what he was doing. So he needed to slow down and to explain many of the moves.
Yeah, we tried really hard to be as fast. It was quite an effort. But
I don't know.
So when you like hear about these days and that kind of thing, what's the kind of feeling that you get out of hearing all these different types of stories about them?
I mean, I love it. I love getting to hear this side, right? Like not the movie star, you know, the not the person, you know, battling his way through Hollywood and all of that, but just like the beginning, the human, the stepping into being a teacher. I mean, I guess, did you ever get a sense was he nervous ever about teaching?
you know, I always tell people that Bruce was like, well, out of the classroom, he was like one of the friends, one of the family, and kind and supportive of people. Yeah, so that has stayed with me. I mean, we knew him before fame.
Yeah.
He did like practical jokes, though, too.
Oh, yes. This I've heard, yes.
Tell us about some of those.
Well, he had a lot of things that he did, but they didn't depend on the person knowing exactly necessarily that he was being pranked. We had one routine in Hong Kong where I would go up to a policeman. If they had a red bar on their shoulder, that meant they supposedly spoke English, and he would have me go up and ask if he could show me where the Canton Theater was, and there was no such theater, and the policeman would try to explain, well, the Canton Road, and no, not Canton Road, and I would then start to talk, you know, really fast and half gibberish, and just as the policeman was getting, you know, frustrated, Bruce would walk up and say, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to find the Canton Theater." He'd, "Oh, I'm going that way. I'll show you." And we'd walk off and leave the policeman. Kind of stupid things like that.
It's sketch comedy.
Very high concept, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, I have to say, it's lovely to hear you say that, because I remember asking Ted when I trained with him, I said, what's something about my dad that a lot of people don't know? And he said, you know, your father was really kind. He really liked to try to help people if he could. Yeah. So.
One of the things I think that I understood about his time with you all, Sen, is that he went to you all for home cooking. Yeah?
Yeah,
in some ways?
my lovely mother cooked food. I think when I read Doug's book here, he said it was because Bruce needed to have some rice. Yeah.
When he was staying at our house.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
When
he would
was
go
staying
over
at your
to
house.
Sue Ann's for some rice.
Yeah.
And when he's staying with you guys, he's eating potatoes to him and steaks and all that kind of stuff as well. What were some of the things that you and your brothers were I understand there was a lot of horsing around, too. There was just a lot of play that you guys would do.
When he was staying at...
Yeah, when he was staying with you guys, or when you guys were
I was
hanging
back
out.
east in college. But
Oh, okay.
He shared a room with my younger brother, who was then a football player at Garfield.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother, according to my brother, he would crack jokes, corny jokes all night, and then crack himself up under the covers. And so they fooled around quite a bit, yeah.
The original dad joke teller.
The original dad joke, even before he's your dad.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, I
I'm sorry,
also
go
wanted to mention that he taught the Boy Scouts in Seattle.
Yes,
That was part of the link up with my father. But I spoke with my brother recently, and I was trying to pick his brain. And what he shared with me was that Bruce taught him how to draw. And then he sent me a picture of a Western person with a cowboy hat on and said, with a patch over his eye, and that's what Bruce taught him how to draw.
A pirate cowboy.
I also, this is a time in which, you know, a lot of folks across the U.S. are learning karate. It's come back from Japan, you know, via soldiers and via immigrants who have come to the U.S. And yet there's not as much kind of emphasis on kung fu. And in karate, you know, it's sort of formal teaching, but that there was not necessarily a lot of philosophy all the time in it, and that this is sort of something that you were talking about, I think, when we were meeting, Doug, about you were taking notes in class and writing down these different types of ideas. Can you talk us through a little bit of that? Like, how did that strike you? You're a student here, and you're getting a heavy dose of Chinese philosophy, Asian philosophy. How did you, were you confused? Was it like, wow, this is really mind-opening? Like, how did that hit?
Well, I was fascinated. I mean, it was something I'd never been exposed to before, so especially the philosophical parts were amazing to me. That be like water, be like a mirror, be like an echo, you know. All that was fascinating to me.
And you were saying that it opened up a lot for you,
Yeah.
that it helped you back to kind of understand sort of foundational things that you had already had around you and
Yeah.
your family.
He gave me a book, the Tao Te Ching, and not that I read it from cover to cover, but I flipped through it.
It's a short book,
and-
Sue-Ann.
Yeah, but I remember looking at the pictures and him telling me about how the water can wear down a rock and just little nuggets like that. But also, a nugget that has really stuck with me was he told all of our class that, you know, if we can avoid a confrontation, that would be the way to go. And I mean, we call it de-escalation now, but he was ahead of his time again.
And it feels like this is the moment where he's going from being somebody who just loves fighting to somebody who's understanding the purpose and the intention for learning how to fight. Self-defense, fighting to protect your folks, fighting for justice. Would you say that?
Yeah, and the other piece that has stuck with me is just he taught us to be aware of our surroundings. I guess that's part of emptying your mind. And you empty your mind, but you're still aware of what's around you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just curious, what kind of student was my mom in class?
I didn't pay a lot of attention to her. She was right in there, you know. Yeah, I mean, she was real physical. We were both.
Yeah.
Well, she was a cheerleader, so
Yeah.
yeah, she was in top condition.
Even to this day, like
Yeah.
she works out way more than I do, even today. And I think like, wow, what a great match.
That's what I really enjoyed in your book, Jeff, because, you know, as I read it, I wanted to read about Linda, but just her strength and her smarts came through. Yeah, there's a lot of credit that goes to her support and wisdom.
Well, I think you were the one who had told me she graduated at the top of her class.
Yes. Top
and
10.
Top 10, yeah, and of your class. And then she immediately becomes like one of the top students as she's studying with alongside you all. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it's not often talked about with your mom.
It's true, yeah.
How badass she is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doug, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about later. I know that Sue-Ann, after Bruce leaves, you didn't see him for a while. But Doug, you as well. You kind of fell out of touch when Bruce left, but you reconnected in Hong Kong much later in the 1970s. And I'm wondering if you could tell us how that came about and what had transpired in between. Well, maybe not what had transpired, but how are things different when you reconnected with Bruce and with Linda?
It'd been several years. I went back east to college and then law school, got married, and my wife and I went to Japan. She's Japanese, and I worked in Tokyo in a law firm. And by then, as far as I knew, Bruce was in Hollywood. The Green Hornet had been on the screen, et cetera. And the last I heard, he was in Hollywood. But I had an occasion to go down to Hong Kong on business from Tokyo, and I wanted to look up the family. So I went to the apartment on Nathan Road where I'd spent the summer with his family, and it was a primary school or something there. And I looked in the phone book for everybody whose name I could remember. Couldn't find him, so.
It's like 9 years later after you had gone.
This was in 70, about a year, 72.
72,
yeah. And so I had kind of given up, and I was talking to an accountant in his office, and I mentioned I was looking for an old friend, and he said, well, who's the friend? And I said, well, he's a very good friend, but you would know who he is. Bruce Lee, you probably wouldn't know him, but his father was a very famous movie star. And this guy looks at me really weirdly. He said, you say you're a good friend of his? And I said, yeah. He reaches over to the coffee table and pulls out a newspaper, opens to the movie section, full page ad of Bruce's second movie that had just hit in Hong Kong and outgrossed every other movie up to that point. He said, he's here. In Hong Kong. I said, oh my God, so I called the movie studio and said I was an old friend and please, could I talk to Bruce? Well, yeah, we'll give him a message. Give me your name. And so I gave him my Chinese name that Bruce had given me, Bak Ma Duck, which is kind of loose transliteration of Doug Palmer. And 5 minutes later, the phone rings and it's Bruce. And so we rehooked up. My wife and I stayed a couple extra days in Hong Kong and actually at Bruce's house and Bruce and Linda's house. And it was great. You asked what had changed, not much. There was still corny jokes and but it was obvious that he was having to be a different person to some extent because of the notoriety that he had.
Tell us a little bit more about. So Shannon, you got to meet Shannon then, I guess probably for the first time. Shannon remembers all of that, I'm sure.
Crystal clear. No. I mean, I do remember my memories really start in Hong Kong. I was born in Los Angeles, but my memories start in Hong Kong. And I remember our house that we lived in Kowloon Tong area, and I remember going to visit, Golden Harvest, visit him at the set and Golden Harvest, and just little flashes of memory like that. It's not, I was so little, but my first memories are, of the dogs that we had, the dogs and cats that we had around our house, and all of that. Another thing about Bruce Lee, he loved animals. We always had animals, so Hong Kong to me is home in a way, when I go there, I feel a real connection to the city, as it has its own scent, and when I smell that smell, I just am I feel really comforted by it, actually. Yeah, so Hong Kong is very special to me in that way.
I guess this question is for you, Shannon. You've really put a lot into the Seattle community over the years. You're on the board of the Wing Luke Museum. you're working with the Seattle Children's Theater. You all are going to be putting up a play next year on your father.
Yeah, February 19th, it premieres.
It's called Young Dragon.
Young Dragon, a
Heard it
Bruce
here
Lee story.
first. Yeah. But you've invested a lot in Seattle, and I'm wondering sort of what's sort of behind this commitment that you made, this investment that you've made to Seattle.
Seattle is even though I don't live here, it's very special to me. After my father died, we came back to Seattle, actually, and I went to a year of preschool here in Seattle before we moved back down to Los Angeles. And of course, my father is buried here, and now, of course, my brother is also buried here. So there's always a pull to Seattle for me. And I know it was a very special time in their lives. My mom is from here, right? So it's home for her. And so there is this pull. And interestingly, we didn't come up to Seattle a lot when I was growing up because, we just didn't travel that much. And so I didn't get to spend a lot of time in my sort of like elementary, high school sort of years and into college. But it was always a place we would come occasionally because this is where my father is, And so just knowing that this is the birthplace of my family, right? I have always felt a strong connection, even though, as I said, I'm not local or native in any way, in the sense of like, I don't know the city all that well and everything, but my heart, there's a piece of my heart here. And actually, more and more as time goes on, I'm trying to figure out ways to be more connected to the city and to do more work here. And I'm really just at the beginning of that, really. I mean, I've been on the board of the Wing Luke now for just under 2 years. We've had an exhibit there for several years, and it's probably been almost close to 10 years that we've had something there, and now we're working with Seattle Children's Theater, and through the Bruce Lee Foundation, we want to bring our programming here, and so I have to say, I mean, this is kind of a out there story, but the last handful of times over the last several years that I've been up here, first of all, it's a strange experience because when I go to visit my father and my brother, I have never once in my whole life managed to be there by myself. There's always somebody there. I might get like a minute and then somebody shows up, But there's such an energetic pull there at the gravesite. Like, it's this vortex, and I've had some really special happenstance experiences. Like, I was renting an Airbnb somewhere, I was here for doing some stuff, and I just, the executive director of the foundation and I, we just went on a walk, and we're like, oh, where's this trail? Oh, where are we going now? And we ended up down at Lake Washington. And we're standing there looking out at the water, and I look up in the sky, and there's this cloud form, and it is absolutely in the shape of a dragon. Wow. And I take a picture of it, and I'm like, whoa. And then later, that evening, I'm like, look at this picture. And somebody says, that picture of your dad meditating on the dock? They're like, it's right there. I know, and I was like, like, what's happening right now? So, I just feel like there's this really energetic, heartfelt connection. And, my father is buried here because my mom and dad always said that one day when they were ready to retire, that they would come back here.
Thank you for telling those stories. I think we want to open it up. Courtney, do we have the questions coming in via the QR code? Maybe we can start going to some of those questions. I just wanted to say, like, as somebody coming in from the outside, born in Honolulu, Hawaii, and then pretty much coming of age in the Bay Area as well, San Francisco Bay Area. I feel that feeling too. You know, that's partly why so much of the book is dedicated to Seattle. And we're in a room here full of people who knew your father, you know, or were influenced by your father, or both. And yeah, there's definitely a different kind of feeling here in thinking about it. And then thinking about, you know, where he was when he arrived here as an 18-year-old, and then becoming your teacher, the teacher to both of you, even though he's just a couple of years older, and then learning all of these different types of things that he then takes with him to Hollywood, where he hits the bamboo ceiling, needs to go to Hong Kong, and then come back in order to crack it. And it's just really, I think we all kind of felt that when you said that your parents are always intending to end it back here.
Yeah. So can I ask you a question? Yeah. I'm curious. I mean, we're here because of you, because of this book that you've written. I'm curious what the journey of writing this book was like for you. And how is this book different, if it is, than other books that you've written?
That I've written? I remember when we first met and I had come to you, I was just really interested in all these linkages, these hip-hop links, you know, between Bruce's youth and just kids growing up in the Bronx in the late 60s until the 1970s who started this culture that we have come to know as hip-hop. And so thinking about these kids, you know, who are like coming over the border after the Chinese Civil War into Hong Kong and getting into these fight clubs and sort of forming this ritual type of culture where they're transforming all of their energies, all of their anger into actually a creative culture in many ways. You know, so I likened the Bamo fight culture to thinking about the rise of hip-hop and the competitions that b-boys and b-girls would be having and graffiti artists would be having and DJs trying to outsound each other. It was just really interesting. I'm attracted to these stories where these kids who are all the way on the outside, or just people who are all the way on the outside, get creative and completely transform everything. That's sort of the way I came to the story, but I think that the journey that I took was to really find out and learn about why your father still has such an impact on us today. And it's because of who he became here, I think, in Seattle. You know, I think it's because of his journey into becoming an Asian American. Before there was a term for Asian American. And so that's what the book ended up kind of being about.
Yeah.
Okay, no more questions for me. Let's see if there's questions for the audience.
My question, do you have plan make it new movie where play your father, like ideas, like kind of.
Oh, I got a lot of ideas.
I can verify that.
Yeah.
A lot of great ideas.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a number of film and TV projects in development. We have been working for a long time on a new biopic, biographical film about his life. I don't know when that's going to come together. I've also been working on an animated TV series. So, yeah. Which is really special and really an important medium, actually, because in animation, Bruce Lee gets to be Bruce Lee, and he gets to do whatever we can dream him to do in animation, right? Because in a biographical film, it's an actor playing him, right? Or if it's something based on an idea that he created, he's not actually in it. It has his imprint, it has his energy, like Warrior, the TV series, if you've seen that. But yeah, we have a number of film and TV projects, including we're trying to get Breath of the Dragon, the book that I co-authored made into a film also. So we got lots cooking.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Akia Wong. So my question is just as a freshman in college that's in University of Seattle, double majoring in planning to double major in psychology and philosophy. I wonder where that came from. But anyways, my question is, as a young martial artist with way too much ambition and energy to know what to do with, what do you think would be Bruce Lee's one message to a young martial artist like me, and also to many martial artists in the world today?
What a question. Doug, yes. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Do you want to start, and Suen, you can follow?
Yeah, I'd say be open to everything you come across, be ready to learn from whoever you meet, and practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, I got a lot of inspiration just finishing this book. And yeah, there's a lot of messages in it, and learn from Bruce.
Yeah, and I would add, my dad said everything that he learned about life, he learned through the practice of martial arts. And, part of the work of what we do through the Bruce Lee Foundation is to empower youth mental health through martial arts, mindfulness, community based in his teachings. And I know for myself that what I learned in martial arts was how to, remain calm in the midst of the storm, right? How to manage your own inner life, and how to know yourself. I mean, one of the things I talk about a lot is my father said, for a real Kung Fu man, the kicks and punches are aimed at yourself. They're not aimed at others. And so that is the work of a lifetime, So everything they said, like, just keep going and deepening your understanding, and where can you make those connections between the physical, the mental, the energetic, life, all of it. It's all one thing in the end. It's all an ecosystem. And I think actually martial arts is a really beautiful practice for learning how to live and engage with life. And it sounds like, psychology and philosophy. It sounds like you're deep in it. So yeah, just as he would write a lot of times, he'd say, keep on blasting. So just keep at it.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to
Thank
add
you for that question.
on the psychology and philosophy, the history too. We've come a long way. There's ethnic studies now. We have another book on one of the tables written by one of the Ragey Grannies here, Juanita Lott. And
Yes,
there's a
thank you
lot
for
of
that book.
history that brought us to where we are.
Book on the
Thank you.
San Francisco State Third
San
World
Francisco
Strike.
State,
Yeah.
the strike
Yes.
for ethnic
Thank you.
studies.
For ethnic studies, yes.
My question would be about the braided chain or stream that is the Tao. In your book, you mentioned Fukyung bringing young Bruce to Seattle. I had the opportunity to meet Fukyung because he was best friends with Sher Lu, who was a Taoist abbot. So in your comments there, you say that Fukyung taught him internal kung fu, but that's like 2 words. And so do you know anything more about what Fuke might have been teaching Bruce as opposed to just the red boat Wing Chun that Fuke was studied?
No, actually, I don't.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
Yeah,
all
I
right.
wish I did. I
No.
wish I did. I'll say for me, in terms of my research process, there were so many people that I didn't get to meet.
Yeah, okay.
And in many cases, I got to talk to their students, or Andy Kimura is in the house.
Is he?
Taki Kimura is.
Yes, he is, right over there.
Or their children. And so, I'm part of that, I guess, 3rd generation of writers about Bruce Lee.
Well,
But that's a great question. I wish I knew the answer.
we're the grandchildren of your father. So I've been teaching Wing Chun now for 32 years. My best friend is a retired police officer, trained with Tucky for like over 20 years, being part of the police department. Fukyung also trained Jesse Glover and a bunch of his people and stuff like that. I met Wally J through James DeMille. He was my first Kung Fu teacher. So anyway, there's a bunch of braided streams of the Tao that are all
Love
woven
that.
together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll just quickly add to that, you know, the letter that my father wrote to Pearl when he was around 21, which many of you may have read, you know, he talks about being able to feel this innate power within himself and that he could hold it in his hand and that it was, you know, more than faith and, you know, all of these things. And in a way, when I hear that phrase, like internal Kung Fu, I wonder, like, to what extent is he talking about really being able to develop the chi, the life force, the internal energy that he was able to manipulate and express so beautifully and devastatingly.
Yeah. You're talking about the letter that he wrote to Pearl Cho.
Yeah.
It's a powerful letter, and we reprint a fair amount of it in this book. But yeah, just to say that I think one of the things that, and this is maybe going to get a little bit into too much martial arts, but what he offered to folks, you know, during this particular period was a sort of curiosity about the internal arts, about, you know, the sort of so-called soft arts, and also this idea of how to try to work all the different angles. I think this, and to try to test them out, right, and to see what would really work. And I think that this is what's happening in the classes. But I don't know enough about, you know, what you're asking to be able to answer you sufficiently on
More
that. But,
importantly,
yeah.
the United States has preserved a bunch of Chinese traditions. So
Absolutely, yeah.
We have a whole bunch of the Gadan High tradition from California, the Taoist school down in San Diego, and all those guys. All those people are interrelated, but we preserved things that basically don't exist in China anymore because they were outlawed or banned.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, we'll take these last two questions actually here, and then we're gonna need to wrap up. But go ahead.
Okay, great, thanks. As we all know, women hold up half the sky, if not most of it.
Yes.
And so I would love to ask Sue, what is her experience with Linda being the partner of Bruce Lee, and who was she to him?
Linda was the rock, I would say. I read in your book how when he was really down or was rejected, that she would come and do the telephone calls. So she was the yin to his yang, or his yang to the yang to his yin, but so it was a power couple.
Hi, this is for Jeff. There was a book about Jimi Hendrix that said Jimi Hendrix and Bruce Lee met at a Rainier Avenue bowling alley. I just wondered if you knew anything about that.
Wow.
Or did they, or as far as you know, did they ever meet?
I didn't find anything to that extent. I think that if I had been there and taken a picture, that would have been amazing. I mean, did they bowl? Did they both bowl?
Well,
is
they
that
were
what you're
too
saying?
poor to even go into the bowling alley. They just happened to meet each other there. That's what the source says.
Wow. Let's find out. Where? Imperial Lanes, did you say?
It was a book by Charles Cross about Jimi Hendrix.
Charles. Okay.
Yeah.
Charles does his research, and
But
so.
he's not the one that said it, but he quoted somebody that said
Oh, you quote somebody said that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Whew, worlds colliding.
Well,
What a powerful moment. I think that the whole universe could have come to an end right then.
they have the same birthday, too.
Right. Yeah. And that they were in the same neighborhood, that they came out of the same neighborhood, still trips me the heck out. Yeah. Thank you all so much. I actually want to ask this one last question, if I may, of all of you, which is, we're living in a moment in which there's a lot of division, strife, rancor. A lot of the wrong people are on the wrong side of the weapons, guns, and forces. What do you think is the best of the lessons that you learned that you might be able to equip, especially younger folks with for now? I noticed that there's 2 generations here, and then there's 2 generations after us who are fans of Bruce Lee. But what have you learned that you might be able to give and sort of impart to especially younger generations that you learned from Bruce Lee for this moment? And that's for Doug and Sue-Ann, and actually also for Shannon.
Well, he was epitomized open-mindedness and open to all kinds of people. His students were from all walks of life. And he used to say, I don't want to be thought of as a Chinese or an American, but as a human being, because we're all basically the same. And he really lived that. He walked that walk.
I hang around with a lot of young people who have grown up, and they call themselves yelders, not elders, but young elders.
Elders. Oh, got it. Okay.
But what I see in the group is that they have their own skills, their artistry, their mastery of organizing, and let's see where I'm going with this. But one of them said to me, there's so many that could become like Bruce Lee if we weren't yanking them off the streets and putting them in detention and deportation. And that, that really resonated with me, yeah.
You know, I love listening to the both of you talk about the things that you learned from my father, and I'm so grateful that he was such a recorder of his own experience, so that I also got to learn from him, even though he died when I was 4 years old. And so I do feel like I've also learned from him in some way. And I think more and more, the thing that I work on and that he talked about all the time is self-actualization, right? But more easily said, I think it's that you change the world by changing yourself. And all of the things we've said here tonight, you know, about how he just was who he was. You know, people ask my mom all the time, well, what was Bruce Lee like? She said, you know, the guy you see in the movies, he was like that. You know?
That sounds like a very Taoist thing to say.
But I think what she meant is like, yes, he was acting and putting on, you know, playing a role and all of that, but that charisma, that light, that energy, that you know, wanting to play and have fun and joke and laugh and, you know, all of that. And he was fierce and intense and like that's what he was like, you know? And so I think, you know, it's what he would say, which is work on being who you really are and then just walk in the room as who you really are. And it takes courage to do that, you know? And you gotta develop that courage because, you know, just as you said so beautifully just now, like, if Bruce Lee hadn't been so committed and dedicated to himself, if he hadn't believed in himself when nobody else believed in him and nobody else was giving him a chance, then we wouldn't be talking about him today. So we all have that ability, but a lot of times we got to get a lot of junk out of the way first in order to do that. Yeah. Can I ask you, what have you learned from Bruce Lee?
Well played, Shannon. Well played. Whew. I mean, I think you all dropped the mic. I'm just struck. You know how long I've been working on this book,
Yes, I do.
and
Is it 10 years?
yeah, it's a lot longer than that. But it's interesting that this book should come out now in this particular environment. Like even if it came out like whatever, like 12 months ago,
Yeah.
right? As
Yeah.
opposed to now. But I think just like what you all said, Bruce was open. Bruce was somebody who, I don't think that he was colorblind so much as he was understanding that the deep connections that we need to make are direct to each other, right? And I think that, during the pandemic, right, when we were feeling very vulnerable, when we were feeling attacked, when we were feeling afraid, that's when the image of your father comes back up in huge ways. And that was what kind of gave me a focus to be able to say, oh, that's what the book needs to kind of be about. And so, for me, it's just to be able to see in his journey to self-actualization that he actually becomes a way for all of us to be able to understand how we can get to who we need to be. And that we have to move out of the way all of these structures that are keeping us back, right? That we have to be continually open to others, to reach out for solidarity, and that is all part of this process, like you say, of becoming more and more human. And so Bruce Lee's message is no more different than what we've learned from James Baldwin, or or Octavia Butler, or any of the other folks who have just urged us to become more human.
I have a question for you.
Wait, we're supposed to end this right now.
This is an easy
it's like we're
one.
over. It's
No,
literally
this is
like.
an easy one.
Oh, okay.
Was it you that said that we wouldn't have Bruce Lee without birthright citizenship?
Yeah, because he was born in the U.S. and he has then the rights to be a citizen because of the Black freedom struggle, right? That results in the 14th Amendment, and because of that, we get to this point now where people want to take that away. So, if we are looking at President Trump's executive order, Bruce and his parents would have been deported right away, right? And that executive order is still being fought in the Supreme Court. We're going to see kind of what happens because of that. But this is something that some people haven't wanted to talk about that. I've put it out there, and people have been like, "Well, Bruce was an American. End of story." It's not that simple,
No.
right? People are like debating whether Bruce was an immigrant or an American online in these places, and I'm like, duh, he was both.
Both, yeah.
And the fact that we can't have a discussion about how he is, and many of us are, both now in this particular political climate, is telling. Yeah. So I think that in that way, if you really look at your father's story, it still points us towards looking at these questions of how we get free and remain free. Yeah.
It is, on his gravestone, it says, "Your inspiration continues to guide us toward our personal liberation." Right. Yeah. So
He was about freedom.
he was about freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great place to end it. Thank you so much, Doug Palmer, Sue Ann Kay, Shannon Lee. Thank you all for coming tonight.
And Jeff Chang.